It's Saturday evening. It's time to talk about the very best comic books of the entire week and of the entire year, actually, with our good friend Drew. How you doing, Drew?
I am fantastic, Wes. It's college football and pro football weekend. Let's get to some comics first, because I want to watch these games.
Well, what happened to your team? You're a big Indiana fan. They had a college football playoff game against Notre Dame yesterday. Did they win?
Unfortunately, no. It got close at the very end. You know, I was talking to the lady friend. I was like, you know what? I think if we get a touchdown here, kick off, get an onside kick, score again, get some 2-point conversions, we may have a chance. Unfortunately, it didn't go that way. But maybe next year. We'll see what happens.
Fortunately, this was actually a pretty darn good week for new comic books. But before we get to that, I do want to talk to you. Last week, you said your worst comic book of the year was Batman. What is your best comic book of the year?
It was close between another series. Well, one or two others. But for me, the standout is Conan the Barbarian. What else can we say about this series that we haven't already said, Wes? I mean, this comic is the gold standard in how to have the very best writer, artists, colorists, letterer, and editor. What do you get with these guys? The best comic in the industry. If you disagree, well, hey, you're wrong. I mean, this whole year, at the very least, Wes, we have recommended every single issue. And at the most, we had it as our pick of the week. Jim Zub has somehow directly linked up with the spirit of Robert E. Howard and is perfectly channeling his voice into these stories, which is beyond remarkable considering how many people have tried and gotten it so very wrong. See Jason Aaron, for example. And Roberto Del Torre, I mean, this guy will go down as one of the greatest Conan artists of all time. You want a guy who can directly channel John Buscema, but with a more graphic flair? Roberto is your cowboy. I mean, and even Doug Braithwaite, he's bringing his A game. And this is some of the best work of his career, and you can tell he's having a ball. I mean, people complain about not being able to find a fun comic or a good comic to read. And you know what I say? Clearly, you're not reading Conan. Do yourself a favor, pick up a copy, read it, and thank me later.
Absolutely. I'm an enormous Conan the Barbarian fan. One of my first movie loves outside of Star Wars was Conan, obviously with Arnold Schwarzenegger back in the day. I'm a huge fan of the Robert E. Howard, obviously the novels and short stories that he wrote. I'm very shocked at just how well Jim Zub is able to write in this wheelhouse, and his stuff doesn't feel alien. It doesn't feel outside of the things that Robert E. Howard had really created. And you can tell there's a love and an appreciation for the original creation of Conan the Barbarian, and he does everything that he can to really stick to the source material and make sure it's authentic Conan the Barbarian. And that's what I love about it the most, is that it feels so awesome and authentic, but also you do get really good throwbacks to maybe like the Frost Giant's Daughter, which was a really cool story that they did in there. And I agree, it's definitely one of the 3 best comic series of the year, in my opinion. And we'll definitely be talking about it once I go down my 10 best of the year.
It's going to be in the top 3 of the year for me. I mean, it's going to be my favorite of the year. I mean, let's see if they can go for the hat trick next year.
Yeah. So if you've not been reading Conan the Barbarian, you're looking for great comic books, you've got 12 issues this year and a 4-part crossover event that you might have missed out on. That was all awesome. Jim's up at the top of his game. But there are some writers that were at the top of their game this week. We had an awesome week from DC and an awesome week from Indies. Marvel, not so much. Starting out with the Indies, G.I. Joe, #2, Josh Williamson writing, Tom Riley on art. I love that first issue. And there are actually some stakes and consequences in this universe. We get an awesome heroic moment from the Baroness. You're kind of just waiting for her to turn on the team. Absolutely not. She proves her heroic bona fides in this one, which I thought was a really great moment. And we see the first enormous loss for Duke. And there's a great set of panels from Tom Riley as Duke realizes just how badly he got beaten this route.
This issue was action-packed, balls-to-the-wall action. And if we're 2 issues in, and Josh Williamson, he has not taken his foot off the accelerator at all. You got blood, guts, explosions, Energon. What's not to love here? And we get our introduction to a new Joe in this issue, and I don't know how I feel about him yet. But for right now, I kind of don't like the guy, but we'll see what happens. So not only is there infighting within the Joes, but Cobra is now preparing missions on like 2 to 3 different fronts. We can clearly see which side has their shit together and which side doesn't. Yeah, this is a strong recommend for G.I. Joe. This was an absolute blast.
Absolutely loving that series. Can't wait for it to really pop off in 2025. Another big indie recommendation, The Sacrificers 13, Rick Remender writing, Andre Lima Arajau on art on this one. And I'm kind of digging this new, like, prison swole, scarred up version of Pigeon. He started out so meek and weak, And now it feels like he's been on death row for 10 years and he's got a shank up his keister or something like that. He's taking no prisoners in this one and he's destroying everybody. I was apprehensive when Rick Remender started making this character a little bit more aggressive. But now that the art has kind of come up with it and he's got those prison muscles, I'm kind of all about this new version of Pigeon.
Yeah, I love where he's at in this issue. We get our favorite character, Pigeon, continuing his murderous revenge streak, and it's bloody well done here. And I love how he used to be offended by the name Pigeon, but has learned to live with it and come to like it. This world he's on now, he's coming up against a proletariat way of life in their leader, but we see that Pigeon and their leader, through their fighting and dialogue, that they may not be too different in their causes. They may be more similar than they seem. So does Pigeon get to come along with this plan? Get him to come along with this plan? Will they have to make a sacrifice themselves? You got to read to find out. Yeah, this series has had its peaks and valleys, ebbs and flows, but this is clearly one of the peaks. It's back in that upward trend. This is a good recommend.
Couldn't agree more. It's definitely on the upswing on this one. I didn't know that we needed a Sacrificers ongoing, but I'm still definitely digging it, and Pigeon is the man. This is a surprise recommendation for me. I didn't think that I was going to like this. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #5, Jason Aaron writing, Derek Robertson on art. I didn't particularly like the first 4 issues. I thought the Mikey issue was kind of fun, but it ended on a very depressing note with Donatello in issue #4. And we don't really even get the brothers in this particular comic book because they're establishing this new villain, the new mayor of New York City. I think his name is like Hieronymus Hale or something ridiculous like that. And I thought they fleshed this out really well. And Derek Robertson was the perfect artist to choose for this particular issue. I think he did a great job. And bringing in Casey Jones, who I thought was in Japan with Karai, bringing him into this story and having him confront him, I thought was really well done. And I was shocked at how much I quite enjoyed this one. And I'm kind of digging this new villain and how he became who he is.
Yeah, this issue was interesting. We get the origin of our villainous mayor here. We see what he was like as a kid with his parents, what it was like in school. And it was naturally in typical Jason Aaron form, pretty bleak and depressing. But we see how far this guy is willing to go to get his way. And as we see with a certain mutant character, it's decent emotional manipulation by Aaron with the mutant's massive sad eyes. And you know what? That's a damn good cliffhanger at the end of this issue. No spoilers. This series has been all over the place with its story and the quality of the art and the tone, the character motivations. But this was a solid issue in how to convey the evil of a villain in your series.
Yeah, really surprised on that one. And I'm kind of excited for Juan Ferreira to take over as a full-time artist on issue #6. I think he's awesome. I think he's going to be dynamite in TMNT. Hopefully Jason Aaron can take this someplace that makes it worth our while with Juan Ferreira. I don't want to see a great artist get wasted like that. But that was pretty hard good. Also good to recommend Flash Gordon #5, Jeremy Adams writing, Will Conrad on art. I've been loving this Flash Gordon throwback kind of series. We do know that Ming is in the clutches of this evil gang that's using his name. He thought they were probably in his service. Not the case. They're ready to turn him over. Flash Gordon's like, I should stop helping this guy because he's clearly going to screw me over, but I got to do the right thing. And they finally find out, at least the Empress does, that Flash Gordon is alive. He's on the planet. We also get a really interesting origin story for that robot that we were meeting last issue. And I think it all comes together very, very well. We get some really cool action in here, and Will Conrad continues to annihilate the art on this one. Looks great.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So my theory last time when we talked about issue 4 about a certain robot in the prior issue was true. Yeah. So we see that the robot helping Flash and the others is Dr. Zarkov. And if you're not familiar with him, we get caught up on his past in this issue. We see that not only is he a mental threat now, but a physical threat with this new body his mind inhabits. But it's not all about Zarkov. We get more of Ming and Flash as Flash is needing to rescue Ming. I do love the inner monologue of Flash as we see through his words, motivations about why he's a hero, what separates him from Ming, because Flash is going to do those things that Ming won't. But will Flash save the day? You got to read to find out. This series just keeps getting better and better. And Jeremy Adams' plotting and dialogue is spot on. And we can't forget Will Conrad. This guy is a rock star. The pulp characters, once again, are leading the pack, and Jeremy Adams is leading the way. This is fantastic. If you're not reading Flash Gordon, pick this up and fix yourself and pick this up.
Absolutely. Really enjoyed that issue. Now, normally we would talk about Marvel and maybe recommend a comic book there, but really nothing worth recommending. Fantastic Four is okay. Ultimate Spider-Man, kind of a letdown once again. It's not terrible, but it's not really worth recommending. So shame on you, Marvel. You didn't even deliver anything worth reading. But DC brought the heat this week. They have as many recommendations as any publisher out there combined. Starting out with the New Gods #1, Ram B writing, Evan Cagle on art. I was hesitant about this book. I was like, I don't know that I'm going to love this. In the first 3 or 4 pages, I was like, oh no, this is as bad as I thought it could be. And then it does like a 180 and it picks up. It's actually a really compelling, interesting story that there's this prophecy about this child that's been born that could be a threat to Highfather and New Genesis. There are plans being put into motion there. The illustrations on the Orion introduction I thought was spot on. Evan Cagle kicked so much butt on this one, and I was shocked at how much I actually ended up enjoying this particular comic book.
Yeah, same. When like you said, Wes, when we opened up this issue, it felt like the first, chapter 1, book 1, chapter 1 of the Bible. In the beginning, it's like, oh God, smoke him if you got him. It's going to be a long night. But like you said, it quickly it changes. It veers, makes a hard left turn, and I enjoyed for that. Yeah, this is one of the few Ram V comics I didn't fall asleep standing up reading. Usually his comics need to come with a pack of smelling salts to wake your ass up, but they're so boring. But then again, usually his first issues are solid. And then it just started, the padding seeps in and it starts seeping downhill. But yeah, this is a fun setup here. You got a child born on Earth that could either bring death and destruction or peace for the New Gods. Thus, Highfather wants that child eliminated. But it's a little extreme at first when you hear this. But when you get to that last page, it's like, okay, I can understand the decision by Highfather. It makes sense. Great art as well. I love the scene with Orion revealing his real face from that image inducer. And you see that he really is the child of Darkseid. And there's a great couple of solid fight scenes from him. Look, the New Gods is a very hard sell, like the Legion of Superheroes. But Ram V is off to a really good start. Let's hope he doesn't derail it. This is a solid recommend.
Yep, I was shocked at how much I was kind of invested and bought into that one. So job well done, Ram B. He can do it sometimes, and it feels like he's got a really good handle on the New Gods. Also going to recommend Green Lantern, Green Arrow, World's Finest #1, Jeremy Adams writing, Lucas Meyer on art. Didn't really know what to expect on this, but it's Jeremy Adams. It's probably going to be good, and guess what? It's a lot of fun. You've got the tail end of a Hal Jordan, Oliver Queen road trip going on. They get pulled over. Next thing you know, there's a bazooka or a rocket, shoulder-fired rocket or whatever comes out. And you kind of recognize the villain, but they don't know who he is. You're like, this is kind of strange. You would think that they would know who that guy is. But then we find out this is actually in continuity from a long time ago. And you actually get a second story I didn't even know was going to happen in there. That ended up being like a Green Lantern Flash team up. So I was like pretty blown away by how much fun this was. It was a great book.
Yeah, this is every bang for your buck right here. And once again, Jeremy Adams just kicking ass. I mean, I was grinning from ear to ear reading this comic. I've missed and needed a comic like this from DC. The dialogue between Hal and Ollie, or Hal and Barry, spot on perfection. Their friendship, when written well, is one that is always enjoyable. And what made this really fun and interesting, like you said, was like in this early rendition of Deathstroke, the Terminator, and how Jeremy Adams is using this story to set up a future story with Deathstroke. If Jeremy's writing that, I'm there. Sign me up. The art of this was pretty damn good too. I mean, who's this guy? Lucas Meyer? I can't recall ever hearing of this guy, but he really showed some serious talent and skill in this issue. It was great reading Ollie, Hal, and Slade in a story where they're treated with the utmost respect and not as punchlines to a bad Mark Russell joke. This is a solid recommendation, and I think my pick of the week. I had a blast with this issue.
I believe my pick of the week was probably G.I. Joe #2. I probably should have mentioned that one. But this is definitely in the running for it as well. Also going to recommend Absolute Batman #3, Scott Snyder writing, Nick Dragotta on art. First half of it or whatever is actually pretty fun when they're in the Batmobile dump truck thing and kind of just rolling through the city as Alfred is trying to strike a deal and get some common sense into Bruce's head. It's actually a pretty interesting read, but it does kind of crash to a halt once they start exploring the relationships of Bruce, in this particular case being Edward Nygma. It gets really tedious and kind of stupid and boring. And then I did not like the Black Mask reveal of when they go and they kind of meet him with the mayor and he's naked MMA fighting or something like that. It was really strange, but not in a good, fun way. So it's almost like half a good book, half of a kind of a weird, boring book. And if they continue to go in the less fun route with exploring the character like relationships and trying to flesh those out, I can see myself exiting on this book. He's going to have to stick to the fun parts where he's melting people alive and killing them.
Yeah, well, we get that a few times in this. We see some people getting blown up. It's like, okay, yeah, he's clearly killing these people. But all I gotta say is that if you're reading this and you're not laughing your butt off by some of these pages, like you said, with the pacifist guys in their undies and baseball helmet masks fighting each other on a boat, you're not actively reading this. This comic is beyond ludicrous, and I enjoy it for that. It doesn't take itself seriously, thus we shouldn't either. I mean, from the absurdity, like you said, of the dump truck mobile with rocket jets to Selena wearing her cat hoodie and watching the Marco Zorro with Bruce. This is laugh out loud hilarious. This is a recommend. This is probably be the funniest comic of the year. It's just so over the top kooky.
I don't know, man. I think Ultimates has got a lock on funniest comic book of the year on accident.
Ooh.
That's been a great series. Our final recommendation from DC, surprisingly, Dark Knights of Steel, Allwinter #6, Jay Kristoff writing, Tierso on art. I wasn't completely enamored with this story. I don't know why it really existed, but Deathstroke as a Viking, I can kind of get with it. But I think it really ends on a crescendo on a really high note when they finally tie everything together. You get to see the Batman kind of come back in, and they bring and restore Green back to the universe. And the way that it happens, I think it all makes sense. You get some really good character moments, some good, awesome action out of Deathstroke and a lot of the Deathstroke characters around him. It works better in the end, and I think it'll probably read better like in trades or whatever. But I think they really brought this one home. You don't get the backup story with Aquaman that I know a lot of people were really enjoying to this point, but I thought it was kind of a high moment, probably the best issue of the entire series.
Yeah, I really liked issue 1 and this issue. I think they're perfect bookends. And yeah, like you said, this is the final chapter of this cool Elseworld story. And I'm not going to spoil what happens. You got to read to find out. It's very rare now, Wes, that we actually get a series that ends on a good note, or is just good from beginning to middle to end. Not very often do creatives stick the landing, and they did a great job here sticking the landing of this miniseries. And who knows, maybe we'll get a volume 2 if the reception was just as greeted just as warmly as from other readers. But yeah, this is terrific stuff. I mean, if you like Deathstroke the Terminator, you like Vikings or Knights, this is a story for you. This is a solid recommend.
So really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed talking about all these wonderful comic books with you, Drew. And obviously you had your pick for best comic book of the year this week as well. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I'll see you next week, brother.
See you next week, man. Can't wait.